Few stories in baseball have ever caught people's attention like the story of Sid Finch. I mean, here's a guy with a strange background, no real baseball experience, and somehow he's throwing pitches at 168 miles per hour, faster than anyone ever. He supposedly trained with Tibetan monks and had a weird way of practicing, and for a while, everyone in the baseball world was losing their minds over him. Was he about to change the game forever? Or was there something else going on? Today we're diving into the crazy story of Sid Finch, the greatest hoax in baseball history. You don't want to miss this one. If you love deep dives into baseball's craziest moments, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more awesome content here on Curveball TV. In 1985, Sports Illustrated editor Mark Mulvoy saw an opportunity for a memorable prank when he noticed that one of the magazine's cover dates would fall on April 1st. He enlisted renowned journalist George Plimpton to craft an article about April Fool's Day jokes in sports. However, when Plimpton struggled to find enough material, Mulvoy gave him the green light to invent his own hoax. This led to the birth of Sid Finch, an entirely fictional baseball phenomenon that would soon captivate and confuse sports fans everywhere. According to Plimpton's now legendary article, Hayden Siddhartha Sid Finch was an unknown rookie pitcher training with the New York Mets. His talent was unprecedented. He could reportedly throw a fastball an astonishing 168 miles per hour, a speed far beyond anything seen in professional baseball. Even more bizarre, Finch supposedly wore only one shoe, a heavy hiking boot, while pitching and was torn between a baseball career and his love for the French horn. The Mets scouting report on Finch ranked him beyond the highest possible rating for velocity and accuracy, adding a layer of credibility to his already elaborate tale. Plimpton painted a fascinating backstory for Finch, claiming he was raised in an English orphanage before being adopted by an archaeologist who later died in a plane crash in Nepal. Finch briefly attended Harvard but eventually traveled to Tibet, where he trained under the legendary poet saint Lama Milarepa, mastering the art of mind-body control. This mystical training supposedly gave him the ability to pitch with supernatural precision. However, just as mysteriously as he appeared, Finch decided not to pursue a baseball career, instead choosing to focus on playing the French horn or perhaps taking up golf. The hoax was made all the more believable with the help of staged photographs, featuring Finch interacting with real Mets players, including a young Lenny Dykstra and their actual pitching coach, Mel Stottlemyre. The Mets organization played along, even assigning Finch a uniform with the number 21. The role of Finch was portrayed by Joe Burton, a junior high art teacher from Illinois who happened to be 6 foot 4 inches tall and wore a size 14 shoe. Despite Plimpton's reputation as a literary genius, he was deeply anxious about how the article would be received. His assistant novelist Jonathan D. later recalled how the journalist apologized and agonized over every detail, fearing the joke might fall flat. D, who was involved in the hoax's final stages, later reflected on how even the most successful writers doubt their work. On the D-Day, Plimpton's fears turned out to be unnecessary.
In honor of Major League Baseball's opening day in the U.S., we take a look back at the most talked about pitching prospect in history. It was the curious case of Sid Finch, the unicorn of athletic unicorns brought to the world's attention.
Once the truth was revealed, the Sid Finch story went down as one of the greatest pranks in sports history. A perfect example of how a well-told story, no matter how outrageous, can fool even the most die-hard fans. Despite this clever clue and the outlandish nature of the claims, many readers, especially hopeful Met fans, believed the story to be true. Enthralled by the prospect of such an incredible talent joining their team, they flooded Sports Illustrated with inquiries, desperate for more details. Even professionals were duped, with 2 general managers calling Commissioner Peter Ueberroth for confirmation. And a New York sports editor scolded the Mets for allowing Sports Illustrated to break such monumental news. The frenzy even led a radio talk show host to falsely claim he had seen Finch pitch. Adding to the illusion, the Mets played along by assigning Finch a locker between real players George Foster and Darryl Strawberry. The buzz reached a fever pitch with major networks like CBS, NBC, and ABC, alongside Florida newspapers, eagerly set reporters to All Lang Stadium for an anticipated press conference. On April 2nd, the suspense reached its peak when Mets executive Jay Horwitz and journalist George Plimpton took the stage to deliver shocking news. Sid Finch had chosen to retire from baseball before even playing a single game. This abrupt revelation left reporters bewildered, and while some fans began to suspect something was amiss, others still clung to the hope that Finch was real. A week later, in the April 8th issue, Sports Illustrated published a small follow-up article officially confirming Finch's retirement. Finally, on April 15th, the magazine came clean, revealing that the entire story had been an elaborate April Fool's joke. What started as a playful journalistic experiment became one of the most legendary hoaxes in sports history, fooling fans, reporters, and even seasoned baseball executives. The Sid Finch saga reflected the power of well-crafted storytelling and the unrelenting hope of sports fans searching for the next great hero. Even 30 years later, the legendary Sid Finch hoax is still remembered as one of the most unforgettable moments in baseball history. George Plimpton, the mastermind behind the tale, expanded his original Sports Illustrated article into a novel published in 1987. In this fictional continuation, Finch briefly returned to baseball, drawing inspiration from real-life baseball icons like Sadaharu Oh and Steve Dalkowski, as well as his fictional girlfriend. This time, he fully committed to the game and eventually reached the major leagues with the New York Mets. The novel allowed fans to imagine what might have been if Finch truly existed. Decades later, the Finch phenomenon resurfaced in a new way. In April 2015, ESPN's 30 for 30 Shorts revisited the story, introducing it to a younger audience with a fresh April Fool's twist. This documentary examined the lasting impact of one of the most successful sports hoaxes in history. Later that year, on August 26, 2015, the Brooklyn Cyclones paid tribute to Finch with a special bobblehead giveaway celebrating the hoax's 30th anniversary. Though the Cyclones didn't exist in 1985, they embraced the legend, designing the bobblehead with Finch in their uniform, holding a French horn, and standing with one bare foot, just as Sports Illustrated had described him. Plimpton had passed away by then, but his son Taylor honored his father's legacy by throwing the ceremonial first pitch. Meanwhile, Joe Burton, the man who had posed as Finch in photos, signed autographs for fans. This proved that even a fictional baseball player could leave a lasting legacy in the sport's history. If Sid Finch had been real, the fact is he would have been one of the most astonishing figures in baseball history. While no pitcher has ever come close to his fictional 168 miles per hour in his fastball, a few players have carried on air of mystery, raw talent, and sheer velocity that echoes his legend. One of the most famous is Steve Dalkowski, a left-handed pitcher in the 1950s and 60s whose fastball was rumored to exceed 110 miles per hour, though no radar gun ever officially confirmed it. Like Finch, Dalkowski possessed almost mythical speed, but his lack of control kept him from making it to the majors. He could strike out 15 batters in one game and walk 15 the next, making him an enigma in baseball history. His story has a what-if quality that mirrors Finch's fictional rise and fall. In today's game, the closest comparison would be Aroldis Chapman, the Cuban fireballer who holds the MLB record for the fastest pitch at 105.8 miles per hour. Chapman's arrival in the United States carried its own intrigue, as he defected from Cuba under a cloud of secrecy before stunning the baseball world with his electric fastball. If Sid Finch had existed, he might have taken a similar path, bursting onto the scene with an almost unbelievable talent that left hitters and scouts in awe. And then there's Shohei Ohtani, whose all-around brilliance has redefined what is possible in baseball.
Here's a 2-1. There's a drive. He dives in October with a 3-run home run. He's proven to be inevitable.
Finch might not have been a hitter, but his crazy training and unreal pitching make you think of Ohtani, a guy who can do it all, both pitching and hitting. Another unconventional pitcher, R.A. Dickey, took an entirely different route, but still embodied Finch's outsider spirit. Instead of relying on power, he mastered the knuckleball, a dying art in baseball, and rose from mediocrity to win a Cy Young award. His story of overcoming obstacles with an almost mystical approach to pitching feels like something straight out of the Sid Finch playbook. But in 2014, something different happened. The Minnesota Twins found a real-life version of Sid Finch in Brandon Polson, a pitcher with an almost unbelievable story. At 24 years old, Polson wasn't coming from a traditional baseball background. He was working as a truck driver for his father's excavation business in Northern California. He had raw athletic talent, boasting a 40-inch vertical leap and running the 60-yard dash in just 6.6 seconds. But what really made him stand out was his arm.
Art school has never traditionally been considered a ticket to Major League Baseball, but that is exactly where a hard-throwing young pitcher started throwing hard enough to catch the eye of the scouts, who eventually signed him to the pros.
While playing in local leagues, Polson's fastball regularly hit 100 miles per hour, catching the attention of scouts who couldn't believe what they were seeing. His breakthrough moment came when he played for the Haroldburg Prune Packers, a collegiate summer league team. In just 12 1/3 innings, Polson struck out 31 batters, showing off his elite speed and power. That's when Elliot Strankman, a Twin scout, saw him pitch and knew he had something special. Even though Polson had never been drafted, the Twins took a chance on him and signed him for $250,000, an impressive deal for someone without college or professional experience. Much like Sid Finch, Polson seemed to come out of nowhere, with a story that felt almost too good to be true. His journey from hauling dirt in an excavation truck to pitching professionally is a reminder that baseball can find talent in the most unexpected places. Polson may not have been raised in a Tibetan monastery like Finch, but his rise was just as incredible, proving that sometimes reality can be just as fascinating as fiction. And that is the wild story of Sid Finch, baseball's greatest April Fool's hoax. And hey, if you love deep dives into baseball's craziest moments, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more awesome content here on Curveball TV. See you in the next one.